And we're back with another one with the If Our Kids Ask podcast. Aimee, are you ready for another one?
Yay.
Did that work? Oh, that didn't work. All right. Well, this is our Halloween episode. We were supposed to be dressed up, but maybe you are dressed up. Who are you?
I am a very pregnant lady. No. Yeah. I didn't have time to think. Actually, I could have worn my costume, but I didn't. I didn't put it in the washing machine, so.
Yes. Well, for those people who are tuning in for the very first time and wondering what is this podcast all about, so what we get a chance to do is discuss specifically questions that our kids might ask one day, so that we could maybe create a little bit of a time capsule, a little documentation, so that they know answers to some of our questions in case something bad happens to one or both of us, and we're not around for our kids to ask us the questions. They can look into the podcast and have a little perspective from us from the past. So today we're going to be digging into this idea of if our kids have their first kid, and then some of our perspective on helping them to navigate that area of their life. So before we do that, do you want to save your name reveal for the end of the pod, or do you want to go ahead and share it now?
I don't mind sharing now. So, the name of my second child is gonna be Kylo. Yes. So Kylo and Kalal. So those are gonna be my boys' names.
Nice.
Yep.
And Kylo's middle name?
Logan. So Kylo, Logan, and then Kalal Lee. Yes.
Got a little poetic vibe there. Got the consonants, the K and the L's in both on both first names, and then you have the L's on the middle name.
Yeah. And like Kalal's is like Kalel, like EL, and then LE, like for Lee, LEE.
Yeah.
And then Kylo's is like LO, and then starts LO.
Yeah. I like it. All right. Well, good. So speaking of names, when it comes to your child or children asking you for perspective on names, there are some, and I've never I actually asked maybe parents who end up having kids who name their kids after their parents, who are like, my grandma's name is my name, and all of that. I don't know if that's passed on purposefully or it's more of like an honor thing. Hey, we want to honor it looking backward and upward. But if your kid came to you and said, hey, I want to name our daughter after you, what would your response be to your kid?
I honestly think I would be honored. I would be like, oh, wow.
Like, oh, good vibes.
Yeah. Everybody on my dad's side, all of them named their daughters after my grandma. Like, I have 3 cousins who are all named like Julia.
Yeah.
And and my cousins' kids are all like have similar.
You didn't say this, but your face was almost like, and she's not that special.
I'm like this.
But it is a cool honor. So wait, so then Julia is 3 kids' names, so they weren't dissuaded from using the name even though one had already been used.
Yeah, like I think it's.
I feel like I wouldn't have if somebody they used it.
Yeah, like I think my cousin's name is Julia. My cousin's one of my cousins had a daughter and her name is like Juliana or something like that. It's like all similar.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Gotcha. Okay, and then.
But I think that's like overdoing it. Like, she didn't save a bunch of kids from a burning bus or anything. That's what I'm kind of like.
Maybe I did read that face correctly.
Yeah, I'm like,
but she did provide the opportunity so you could even be born. So I feel like at the minimum there is that, and I feel like would your Spanish game really be as strong as it is without her?
Yeah, that's true. Probably not.
Would you ever want to do a podcast todo en español?
Probably not. I'm not that good.
I know. It would be more funny for people to laugh at.
Maybe we could try it then.
All right. So then for me, well, no,
I
secondary
would be
question for
honored.
you. They say, hey, we're having our son. We want to name him Jeremy.
I think I would like it too.
Yeah.
I like Jeremy's name,
Mm.
especially because like it's spelled different.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So then is that the same amount of honor, or maybe not as much as them being named as a daughter? So let's say they're both sons, have kids at the same time, boy and a girl. Is there a little bit more like feeling? Oh, after me, it's like it's really special. It's maybe a little bit more special. Okay, it's all special because it's grandkids.
yeah,
But what would your perspective there?
yeah, a little more special if it's my name. But I
Yeah.
mean, I always tell Jeremy always is like, your name is Aimee, and I'm like, your name is literally Aimee.
Never thought about that.
So that's where
Okay.
we get into it all the time.
Then so name. Okay. Then what if Kalel or Kylo want to name their kid after them? Are you encouraging that? Does that make you feel good? Because hey, I
Yeah,
started
like
this,
I picked a good name. Yeah, that makes me excited for that too. Yeah, I would feel like I worked hard to pick out my names
Yeah.
for my boys, and I I don't know if you know this, but my dad was super surprised that I wasn't naming Kalel after him.
No, I don't know if I do or not, but it's funny to hear.
So like after, I was already pretty far into my first pregnancy, and my dad goes, "Oh, like it's talking about the name," and he's like, "The name? You already have the name." And I was like, "What name are you talking about?" And then he was like, "My name's," and I was like, "No, I'm not doing that."
Mm.
And he was like,
And at that point, you broke his heart.
I was like, "I'm not doing that." Bob said that if he ever gets married, have a kid, he'll probably do it. So
Which is more typical. How often is it the woman's side that names a kid after the dad?
it's really, I think, like the first and middle name that like they pass on, because I think that's how they've done it. Like, I think the very first ones had a different last name
Yeah.
than my dad does. So, but I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Especially because nobody goes by that name. Like it's such a long name. Nobody that's my dad's name, and nobody I don't even know where we get the name that everybody calls my dad. Nobody calls my dad his name. And then like our brother, nobody calls him by his name either. We call him Pops.
Yeah.
So it's like I wouldn't want to do that. I like people calling Kalel by Kalel's name, and I'm excited for Kylo to be called by Kylo's name.
Yeah.
Also, like the cute nicknames like Kaleli and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Let's see. On my side of it, do I have any preference? It's so in my head because I have had friends. One friend who passed away. Oh, look at Jeanette up in the chat. You want to read that off?
Jeanette said Jackson is named Jackson Davy after my dad.
Special. Yeah.
I did not know that.
See, look at you finding out new information. Yes, in the.
But I think that's a cool name. Like Jackson's a cool name,
It is a cool name.
and I feel like Amy's a cool name.
Mm.
Spelled like mine, at least. But like,
No, I'm just messing with you.
I'm saying like, if it to be named after, like, for somebody to want to name their kid that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's the Aimee is the like antagonist in a lot of Reddit stories, like the fake name that people use. I've heard it in at least 5 different Reddit stories.
So it's like Karen and then Amy's right under.
I don't like this. They're like fake names, Aimee.
Okay, so then I've had a friend. Okay, two of my friends. Well, one of my friends who passed away, and 2 other friends named their child after the friend who passed away. The friend who passed away's name is Kevin. 2 other friends had sons, and then one of them named their kid Kevin, and another named their kid Boston after Kevin, who was from Boston. I was like, dang. But I asked both of them, and I said, hey, if he hadn't died, would you have named them? They're like, no. Like the death solidified them being able to name their kid after one of their, I guess, their best friend.
Ooh.
So if you no,
I'm dead.
then well, I guess it doesn't really apply. Grandma Julia's alive. She got 3.
It was a debate like for a little while in there, like for my uncle.
Yeah.
Like for that on that one. I was like, oh, I don't know if there's a way to like fit his name into the names, but I don't think there. I was like, no, probably not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I had brought it up to Jeremy even. I said, oh, what do you think about the name Corey? And he was like, no, veto.
Well, then Mom had brought up. She said she thought it was cool that we named Corzin, which one of the CJ or Corey, as far as like those other offshoot names of his. And then she brought up that idea. Oh, and I was like, oh yeah, I was not thinking about him at all. But
yeah,
you know, but you know, you could say that, you know, God did his thing or whatever if you want to.
yeah.
But no, if my kid wanted to name me their kid after me, I think it'd be an honor. I would I think it'd be encouraging. I don't think I would plant any seeds to like nudge them in that direction.
Yeah. Like my dad.
I think that kind of the way you phrased the conversation that happened is kind of funny to think about. It's almost like an adorable entitlement. Like, oh yeah, weren't you gonna? You know, it's like, where did you even get that idea from? Okay, so we have that one. Then after my wife, I think that's pretty cool. If they were named after Angelita,
Yeah,
that would be a sweet little gesture, nod to her. So, and then if they named them, if there was Corzin number 2, I think that's also really cool too. Because I think there's so much thought that went into his name. If there's another Corzin, then it's like you feel like you started something. You feel like you started a spark, and then it turned into a flame.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2. You want to read it off? Can you see it?
Yes. How do you navigate exposing your child to content? Where is your line?
All right. So I guess I'll jump into this one first. So exposing them to content. So one of the things I know with my son that I think about is like, I don't know if he's heard a curse word yet. Like, I don't know if he has heard. I mean, naturally, if my wife and I were disagreeing, he's heard of disagreements. But you think about like the purity of his ears and the purity of his eyes. Even like, I know my brother-in-law and his wife, they were mindful of like them even turning their eyes toward a screen. There was a mindfulness of that, which is like they were here and we were playing the game. They were just trying not to have the child turn to the TV or even see the phone. And I'm like, interesting. Because if I'm holding Corzin in different ways, let's say I'm holding him and he's sitting on my lap and I have my phone here. Is he like seeing this behavior of me flipping through Twitter or whatever it is?
Yeah.
And then is he seeing whatever content is on Twitter? Is he seeing any violence, or is he seeing any woman with scantily clad, an outfit on? And it's like, oh man, it's really interesting to think through and navigate. I think I probably even like Jelly. Do you know who Jelly Roll is?
Big guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. The country singer?
Yeah, country singer.
Yeah, I just heard him on the radio.
Yeah.
Tattoos.
So new album came out 3 weeks ago. Definitely vibing to so many of his songs. But again, some of his songs, like there's a random curse word here, curse word there, and it's like, okay, like, so I'm not gonna have it playing because I'm like, I just don't want to be sensitive to his ears. But I know I can be, if there's a 5-point spectrum, if 5 is the most like conservative one, and I want him here cursing or even complaining or even conversations that characters in a TV show or movie are having. I'm certainly on that side of the extreme, as opposed to, hey, let him, whatever I'm watching as a 39-year-old adult, he can watch or listen to as well. So anyway, I think I am probably on that side of it. I know when I've been more diligent, even like with movies, there's a website called kidsinmind.com, and you could go like before you go see a movie, somebody actually goes and watches it, and they rate like the cursing, the vulgarity, the violence, and then the sexual content in the movie or in the show. So it's everything, and it'll tell you, which it could be its own struggle because it's like, oh yeah, this woman reveals her cleavage, or this kind of position that they're in, like nothing graphic was done, but whatever, she was on his lap, or all of this.
Yeah.
So I think about the whole thing, and I think I just want him to, to be as pure minded as possible. But I can see how other households, if you have a TV on, they're just exposed to a whole lot more. So anyway, I sat on that side of it. I kind of wanted you to go first on this one because I know super ego takes place, and it's like, okay, you hear another perspective. But anyway, what's your perspective on that one?
I remember like we had the conversation a while back about like even having your child see a screen for so many years, like how you wanted to go about that. I feel like it's almost impossible like nowadays, unless you keep your child like inside, for you to go about places and do things without running into a screen of any sort, like with your child.
Yeah.
So I think I haven't exactly taken the approach of like don't show him anything. Like I have no problems with, watching TV in the background while Kalal runs around in the living room, or even in the bedroom. Like it doesn't bother me, but also I am mindful, like as far as like the things that I watch. I know that there's like certain shows that Jeremy and I have, like, Jeremy will veto some things, I will veto other things, and it's like, no, just don't watch that in front of him. If you want to watch that, you can wait till he's asleep, and then you can, watch it on your phone over there, other stuff like that. So I think that's, and especially like if I'm by myself. So like if I'm by myself watching.
So let me
Kalal
rewind you and have you paint. So I appreciate the broad perspective, but like again, in this setting, share like more specifics. What's the content you're like? Again, so what you shared was fine and it made sense, but take us deeper into like okay, hey, this type of scene. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
What is it that that he goes, hey, no, this is a little bit too much. What is it about a show is it those three categories of vulgarity, violence, sex, or is it something else?
It definitely would be vulgarity, violence, sex, and then even like illicit substances, like where drugs. People are like over drugs and alcohol. So like Jeremy's real, like, that show Euphoria.
I know of it.
Yeah, so like a lot of like, even like that has like all of that.
Yeah.
So before, when I don't even know if I was pregnant, or before I was pregnant, whenever it was, I had watched that show and Jeremy really didn't like it. Like he's automatically that kind of person who just gets real uncomfortable with like movies and shows like that. So, and he's like, oh, I really don't like that. I really don't like you watching that in front of me. Like, if Jeremy's already kind of like that about himself, he's really like, super feels like that about Kalal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. I know, like, even in, like, let's say, like, I watch Grey's Anatomy a lot, right? In the background when me and Kalal are playing or doing something. Because, he doesn't pay attention to it that much. And, two, like, they really don't do... I mean, and there's, like, people get cut, bruised, and stuff like that on the show. But it's not anything, like, too crazy. Like, people beating each other up. Like, I wouldn't want him watching, like, MMA fights where people get super bloody and, like, there's blood all over the place and they look nasty. Like, it's really staged. So, it's not that much of a problem. And even if they do make, like hints about, like, sex, they don't ever show any types of stuff like that. So, that's where I'm at.
And then, Diamond asked a question. I'll go and read this one. Diamond, our sister, asked, so question, will you keep them from certain family members due to words that come out of their mouth? Your thoughts?
Oh, okay. Let's say yes. Certain ones, yes. So, like, if I really don't trust that somebody can control themselves around my child, I will not put them in a prolonged, like, scenario where they're hanging out with this person. That's where my thoughts are. You
don't have to tell the person, but break down because there's certainly a tolerance.
Yeah.
There's a tolerance. Hey, this is tolerant. Again, you don't got to give me a list of curse words or whatever, or you can if you want to. But then there's a element of, nah, hey, that's too. You cross the line.
Yeah. I think it's all about context also. Like, I think, you know, if you hurt yourself and you say a curse word, you know, like when you hit your knee or you stub your toe and you say a curse word in that moment, am I automatically be like, oh, you're never allowed around my son? No, I'm not.
Yeah.
And even like me, like sometimes I do something and I'm like, you know, say curse words and then I'm like, reel it back in, you know.
Yeah.
But if I like talking to somebody makes me uncomfortable, like with the way that they like are more like vulgar, like, you know, they say more things and don't like filter themselves with me as an adult, then I don't know how comfortable I'd be with that person talking to my child.
So unpack that. Is there any way for you to unpack that where it's
I'm
like,
trying
okay,
to think, like
okay, so then,
like I wouldn't want somebody saying like calling anybody in our family, like any other woman in our family, like the B word, like to say that directed towards any of the women in our family. I wouldn't want that person around my son, you know. Or
yeah, it's interesting because there is, and I feel like you have to hear me go here often enough. So like, there's this missionary thought, right? Which is so there's the explicit missionary, and then there is the covert missionary, and so there's this version of a Christian missionary who's like beat down a door and Christian missionary here to save the day, right? And then there's this other version where it's like, oh, like, hey, I'm just a regular person. You don't really know that I'm here, but I'm trying to do some work. I'm trying to just get in there, and
I'm doing the Lord's work.
I'm doing the Lord's work
background.
by building friendships and connections, so that when I share the gospel, when I share Jesus or share the scriptures with you, then it's gonna actually have an impact. It's coming from a friend, not just from this Christian missionary who busted the door down and flashed his badge of Jesus and all this. So there is a tolerance. I certainly will put. So then for me, in one way, I almost people's comfort level with talking about with the foul language, foul jokes or whatever helps me to know how covert I am, because if I expose myself as being a Christian missionary trying to save their soul, then they do they do change their behavior. But sometimes I just want to know who the person actually is outside of the person they want to portray to the Christian version of me.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
just like in general.
Yeah.
Thinking about it.
Yeah. Because it is, and then when, especially my version of it, as you've heard me say 1,000 times, as we kind of joke about, like it's a more intense version as far as like me having lived out my faith. Like I have a little resume, of like Christian stuff that I've done, so that when that's kind of exposed, and I know eventually like you can't be covert for forever. Eventually, it's like stuff comes out. So I like to like I'll like quote scriptures without telling them it's from the Bible or whatever. I'll quote Proverbs or whatever, giving people advice when they're talking about family. I'm like, oh yeah, think about this, and then I know, hey, like I'm giving them God's word. They may not know it. I might not even say it, but I'm like, hey, like no, think about this quote that really means a lot to me. Anyway, all that to say is what's my approach for my son being around people who are outside of this Christian missionary world, and who does he see his dad being around? Is his dad like, oh yeah, dad only hangs around with other well-behaved Christians who never curse and never are out of line, and you know what I'm saying? Like, or is no, dad's actually on the front line and he has friends that are like we're glad they're our friends and they're on our side as far as like they like dad, and if something ever shady needed to happen, he had people to call. Like I kind of like that idea of my son liking that in his dad, like, oh, he sees his dad being friends with people who don't share his strong religious convictions on language. So that might mean I'm more tolerant on certain things that probably could change, right? Like, what if somebody's telling like a sexual joke in front of my son? I'm like, hey, is this the right? Is this the right?
Yeah.
Or something that came up the other day, which was like, so because my son's gonna be 1/4 black, like N-word usage among other black friends. Like, so let's say my black friends come over and like and they're using the N-word or whatever, and then he hears it. Which of course he could use it because he's quarter black, whatever. But now he could use it.
I don't know about that.
He could use it culturally, but as far as like in my household, okay, now that's a little bit different. Like, would I ask them to, hey, shift that language with a around my son because he can use it culturally,
Yeah.
but I don't want him using it here. You know what I'm
Can
saying?
you imagine Angelita using it?
No. That's hilarious.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious to try to even imagine her saying something like that because she's, again, like the great thing about her is she's very mindful of her image and her reputation and things like that. So she's like, yeah, like
the crazy thing is I've had a spectrum, like an array of different friends, like who are super comfortable with using it and some who are like not, and all of them are black, so it's like it's weird to see. And then what boggles my mind is I'll have some friends who are black who like just don't say it, like or maybe they just don't say it about me, maybe they say it around other black people, but they just don't say it. And then I'll have friends who are like Mexicans who I guess always hang around like other black people and they have no problem saying it. And I'm like, oh dear.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like just what you get comfortable with.
Yeah.
But
okay. Inside of this, the question she came up with. So I think I'm kind of with Aimee. It kind of depends on the kinds of words that comes up. Here's what I want to ask you is kind of the idea behind it is, through what age do you think you would have expectations for your sons around you to not use certain language?
Forever.
Okay. But also, what is, like, I'm curious, naturally, my framework, I can think about verses, right? Oh, this verse, this makes me, like this verse says, let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, except what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. This other one says, avoid, vulgar language, right. So there's these verses that are in my brain. So like my reasoning kind of stops with those verses that I can kind of quote or reference.
Yeah.
But then so not that, again, I think you have like maybe an ethos or like a perspective or roots. I would say it seems like you have some of them that are absolutely in the Christian perspective, and some of them that are just like, hey, this is what you think. But it's interesting with me when somebody has a stronger stance, like you seem to have a stronger stance on this language thing with your kids. Like, where does it, when you say, hey, why do I believe this?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, my answer is simple. Hey, I'll just give you 2 verses from a book I'm trying to base my life off. If you're saying, hey, I'm like not basing my life off that, but like, what's your reasoning of, hey, this is why I don't want this language used by my kids?
Well, it's mainly because I feel like there's so many different words you can use to get your point across. And a lot of times if you're using language that's, inappropriate, it doesn't make anybody else look bad or feel bad as much as like I think it makes you look bad. So like in a professional setting, I've had friends, or I've known guys who are like, oh yeah, I was working for this company and then I got fired, so when I left I said like I cursed out my boss and I took off. And it's like, that doesn't make you look good. It makes you look real childish and like super inappropriate. Like nobody's gonna want to hire you anywhere. Which I don't know if that's like off the wall, like something that hardly ever happens. So like don't think about that as far as like curse words go. But I do think that it's kind of the same thing. Like using those kind of words to think that that's what's gonna put the nail in the coffin as far as getting your point across should not be a thing. Like you should be able to get your point across, get people to understand what you're saying without you having to use these curse words.
So for you, it's an intellectual display of limited vocabulary as opposed to a versatile vocabulary.
Yeah.
So then, okay, that's. Do you think that's the main thing you would say for you? And then is there others? And then you just kind of explain the secondary, or maybe connected to the first one is this of value or benefit? Which is actually, again, back to that scriptural point I just quoted.
Yeah.
Which is like that it may benefit those who listen.
Yeah.
And then I guess you're also talking about utility. The benefit is utility. Is this useful for you in your career to have burned this bridge with calling your boss and mother F and B or something, right? Like, and it's like, okay, you got that off your chest, but then like now whoever he tells about how you are as a human being, you burn not just that bridge, but any bridge he wants to also set on fire too.
Yep.
So utility. So if we boil it down to two words that you were talking about, it would be intellect and utility, and the way those mark you.
Correct.
So if anybody's cursing around you or I could say, oh, I guess you don't think they're very intellectual, do you?
No, I think it just depends also like who you're talking to. Like, there's a certain level of like respect, like, right? To say like if you're like hanging out, chilling by the pool with your friends, and somebody throws you a soda and it hits your hand, and you're like, oh, you effing mother effer, like you with your friends, like you cricket, you know, F word hit me. Like, you're just messing around. You're just throwing bad words out there for what? Like, for no reason. Just because, I think that's when you, like, lower your guard and you're more dumbed down, should I say. Like, you use less brain cells than you are, like, at work or when you go to church or when you go to, do who knows what,
Yeah.
Even going to, like, have a conversation or sit at dinner with your friends, like, I think when you're in a more laid back, relaxed time and you're comfortable with the people that you're with and you're not, like, doing anything really, then it's like, whatever.
That's good. I appreciate you sharing that, the intellectual versatility and also utility in those explanations. I think because the question I imagine that Christian parents might come up with, if the Christian parent like myself goes, hey, we're building my life on this book, and then if the kid for whatever reason goes, hey, I'm not, then it's like, okay, well then, forget the book, let's talk about philosophically. It shows that you look stupider than what you actually are. It shows that you're intellectually incapable of having versatile vocabulary. So that's all that same one. And the other one is it probably hurts you more than it helps you in regard to you being able to make money. You have an income. You get the things that you want. So if we're just talking about utility and intellectual perception, that language hurts you more than it helps. So I think that helps for parents if they can't use the Bible as leverage to try to help
navigate,
persuade their child to clean up their language, then something else works.
Yeah. Yes.
Good. All right. We have contents. Anything else on content that your child is exposed or their child is exposed to? Anything else there?
Nope.
All right. Question number 3. I read the first, you read the second, I'll read the third. What advice do you have for supporting your spouse during pregnancy and after birth? And maybe
especially because we have boys, right?
Boys who will be supporting their wife in pregnancy and after birth.
Ooh. My advice, especially like having gone through the first pregnancy, like with Jeremy and I, I got pregnant like 6 or 7 months after we were already married. So then it was like we were still really new into our marriage. And then, then 6 or 7 months later, then I'm pregnant. And then it was another 9 months. And we were going through a lot. We were still figuring out each other because we weren't living with each other before we got married. We weren't like as close as we were once we got married with each other. So it was like we were taking the time to learn each other, taking the time to do all these things. So when I was pregnant the first time, it was a lot of going back and forth with Jeremy that I didn't have enough time to like focus on my pregnancy as much until like more towards the end. So it wasn't like super like gung ho, supportive, like do everything. I mean, he did do everything for me. He did a lot for me, but it was like we also had other stuff going on. But this second time, before Jeremy went back to college, it was like he was super supportive. It's made my pregnancy like 1,000 times better this time around, because it's like the only things that we were focused on is Kylo, Kylo, and making sure Kylo's happy and making sure I'm happy so that Kylo's happy.
Yeah.
And now it's like, even like, especially like with Jeremy being gone, I still have like, he still supports me as far as like emotionally, and like, he talks to me every day. So all these things are a big help. But I think like supporting your spouse during pregnancy and after birth, like during pregnancy, like making you comfortable, like making your significant other comfortable is so important for the motivation to continue to what is it called, maintain herself. So
Yeah.
like me right now, I'm super duper over being pregnant. Like I'm not, I'm still several weeks away, not like a whole lot, but I'm still like at least a month away from having the baby. So at least 4 or 5 weeks. And I'm like super over it. So like, and I think it would be better. It was better for me near the end of my pregnancy the first time because we were doing better. And it was better for me during the beginning because I had Jeremy. So now it's like I'm really unhappy with being pregnant all the time. So I think if you keep your wife happy when she's pregnant, she'll enjoy it more. So then she'll want to like continue to eat better, continue to walk, continue to exercise, continue to like do it, whatever you can to make her comfortable so that she's able to endure to the end, rather than like being uncomfortable and pushing to like get the baby out ASAP. So which is kind of like, and I felt like that the first time too, but I think that's just because pregnancy is not for me. So, but I think that's what advice I would give, that especially if it's somebody who doesn't like being pregnant, who doesn't like the symptoms that come with it, to make them as comfortable as possible every day. Just every day, that needs to be the focus. And it's 9 months, so it's not like 10 years.
Yeah. Okay, quick practicals that you would give then. Hey, do this, don't do this. Do this, don't do this. So like the broad, do comfortable. Yes. Okay. What were some of yours? Hey, do this, don't do this. That maybe you could pick up on, that you could give to your kids.
Do always buy snacks. Don't complain. Don't complain, because it just makes your significant other super upset. Like for me, anytime Jeremy's like, "Oh, my back hurts," I'm like, "My back hurts. My back hurts." Or he's like, "Oh man," like, especially because he's in school right now. He's like, "Oh, I really don't want to study." Well, I really don't want to be pregnant right now, but neither one of us has a choice now, do we? No complaining. Yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, always, I think, let her know that any issues she has, like, she can blame it on the pregnancy. Just let her blame it on. I hate it. Like, I hate when Jeremy doesn't do this, but I've heard like other guys, especially like on Reddit, who are like, "Oh, well, other women worked all the way through their pregnancy. Other women, do this when they're pregnant. Other women were able to do that when they're pregnant, or able to run a marathon and it's like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about them.
Yeah.
So it's like, don't ever tell your significant other that somebody else was able to do something while pregnant if she's not able to do it. Like, don't ever do that. If she says that she can't do something because she's pregnant, then believe her. That's it.
Good. All right. That's good. Let me think if there's anything I can say to my son. His wife's pregnant.
That goes for mothers too. me, I guess, talking to myself. Or no, I guess. I don't know.
Grandmothers?
Grandmothers.
To
I don't give advice. I just I can't get over how much people should just not give advice. Oh, well, when I was pregnant, I don't care about what happened when you were pregnant.
Sounds kind of personal.
I just, like, that was the problem I had when I was first pregnant. Like, the first time I was pregnant and then the second time. Like, I remember being like, I can't stand it when other people were like, well, when I was pregnant. It's like, I don't care about you. You don't matter. You're not me. Like, it would happen from, like, everybody. Like, it wouldn't just be, like, you know, mom or Diamond or whoever, you know, well, not just somebody close to me. Like, all the time people want to give you advice.
Yeah. Which I was discussing this idea this past week, and I think it's relevant because...
So if her mom is telling her stuff, you tell her mom that she's not her.
So you're giving advice to your son about...
His mother-in-law.
To create problems with him.
You stick up for your wife.
If you want your uncle's advice about this, create more harmony than animosity within your family dynamics. Okay, let's see, where we at? Family, comfort. Hey, how do you support spouse? You mentioned, advice. Yeah, I think the advice the part is interesting because we're older parents as 39-year-olds. So it's almost, I don't know if it's like this or not.
For us youngins?
For the 39-year-olds compared to y'all 20-year-olds who people might think, oh, they don't know. You know, like,
Yeah.
They don't know this, so you got to tell them. They don't know this, you got to tell them. You know what I'm saying? Versus 39-year-old, they're like, yeah, they probably know what they know and they don't know what they don't know. And it's kind of, it's almost like you, depending on age and how people move through life, you can think that someone doesn't need your advice or help. And you can look at somebody else and go, oh, she needs my advice or help. And there's another thing that happens, especially in the Christian world, that's kind of interesting, which is they go, it's almost like, oh, I have a thought, and maybe God gave me this thought to give. Which I don't do that, but I know it's the way people can feel. They're like, oh, what if God gave me that thought to give to them? And then they feel like they're fulfilling some kind of divine purpose, which...
Keep your thoughts to yourself.
Which,
for me.
Which I find myself, again, I enjoy introduction questions, and maybe this is just me overly analytical, but I think it really helps, which is like, hey, like, would you want any input or advice about that situation? And then, like, let them. Like, so if you say yes, you asked for it, so I gave it to you. If you say no, then I just respect you and I keep it to myself.
I think I would be okay with that. Like, if somebody said, well, do you want me to tell you how it was when I was? No, I don't, really.
Do you think it would increase your chances of saying yes if they had introduced a question like that?
And I think it would open my brain more if they, instead of just automatically telling me, like, you're weak.
Because I think what can happen on the ego side is the ego kind of, this is what the ego is saying is, oh, you don't think I'm smart enough to know that. You don't think I'm educated, informed enough to know that. You don't think I'm strong enough, whatever. So it's almost like it's taken as an insult. But the question of somebody asking is almost like, for me at least, when somebody asks me, hey, are you open to some input about this area? Or you open to another perspective on it, then it's almost like, oh, they're actually being considerate. Consideration makes my ego go, oh, like, man, this is a really nice person. Like, they didn't just dump on me. They asked me. And now, if they would have just gave me the same advice without that introduction question, my ego would have been a little bit higher up and difficult to take the input.
Yeah.
But instead, they almost prepared the soil a little bit of my own ego, and then my ego became all, like, guards down, and then they gave me the information. This is a lot to what I'm talking about, the Christian missionary stuff, which is like, I want people's guards to be down, the soil to be prepared to plant the seeds. But yeah, so maybe there's a lot of ego management. If you understand how people's egos are involved, then you might navigate through life differently. Back to our sons, it's like, yeah, if their egos involved. To speak to the ego is I was surprised by some women, and you can talk about this if you want to, how there is a trope that some women feel more beautiful pregnant.
Oh,
And there's an absolute trope on the opposite side of that where they feel more disgusting pregnant. They feel fat. They feel overweight. They feel bloated. They feel like they can't walk, and they feel like they don't look good in any of their clothes. And so then it's like, if we're talking to our sons about, like, if you assume that there might be some fragile, insecure thoughts about their body image, then you can let them know how they're glowing or how like they're managing it well, and how they're beautiful, and how it's a really unique area of life. You give them a unique number of compliments about them as they carry your child.
Yeah.
What is it like for you? Because so my outside perspective of you is you come off as confident and secure and like, oh, she doesn't have you don't on the pod or otherwise come across doubtful about yourself until I like almost have to like probe it and ask you about something specific, and then I go, oh, weird, like that didn't even come to my brain that you would have that thought about yourself. Because I think our conversations, it's almost like sometimes we joke about it, but it's like, oh, the problems are other people. It's not me.
Yeah.
So, but then sometimes I talk to you again when we're one-on-one, even outside of the pod, and it's like, oh no, like you do have negative thoughts about self.
Yeah.
But anyway, what is it like for you to
Yeah. And I think we talked about it one of these days, and you would ask me that question, like if I'm one of those people who feels like super extra beautiful when they're pregnant, and I said absolutely not. Like that's not how I feel at all. I feel like horrible. Like it's annoying. I felt like especially during my first pregnancy, since I lost like a bunch of weight, then I didn't end up gaining as much weight. During my first pregnancy, it was really like not that big of a deal. But this pregnancy, like I am now way more than I did when I gave birth to Kalel.
Yeah.
So it's now getting to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, like am I gaining too much weight? Like what's going on? And
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I kind of want to. So today when you came in, I said, "Oh wow, you look really pregnant." Is that an uptick? Was that a negative? Was that a neutral? Where was that on the? Because I did try to end up packaging it with adorable in there after, but I was like, oh, I hadn't given enough information about how I'm perceiving your look, and I was trying to say some nice things. It's
like it's kind of like a neutral, because it's kind of like both put together. I guess neutral might not be. It's kind of like plus minus, because like the way that Jeremy puts it is like during my first pregnancy, I really didn't look pregnant until like the last week or two.
Oh wow!
So it was like I really nobody saw me. Really, like I didn't have time to get that big.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm bigger than I was back then. So, and I still am not as far along. So Jeremy was saying like, oh, the first time you were pregnant, you were like, oh, I don't have a baby bump. Like, complaining about it. I guess, like I don't have a baby bump, because then I had to wait super long to get my maternity pictures done. This time it's different. And he's like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm looking so big. And he's like, wait, do you want to or do you not want to? And I'm like, I want to, but I don't want to. Like, I want to like the way that it looks, but I don't want to look that way. I don't know how to.
This is a perfect display of a pregnant woman's mind at work. It's like, wait, what do you want? What do you want?
I want to look like, I think the way that I look pregnant is great. Like, I don't think that I've gained too much weight. I don't think that, like, my arms and my legs have also gotten big, or like, I've gained an incredible amount of weight everywhere. I just feel like I want my body back the way that it was. So it's like the more my body changes and looks pregnant, the more I feel like it's not mine. It's like,
it's being rented, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I'm like, this pregnant lady's borrowing my body. She's messing it up. The inside me is like, this pregnant lady's borrowing my body to grow this child. She's messing it all up. But externally, like, I feel fine.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. And I'm excited to, like, get pictures taken. So.
Yeah. And I think another thing I would say to support in this conversation is the idea of if you can ask questions. So another common idea is they say pregnant brain, or like the hormones and emotions and all of these things that are happening with the woman as she's going through all of this, and like the way she thinks and sees things is going to be a little bit different. And then so it's like, hopefully our sons have heard it 1,000 times, but it's like it's not the time to be logical. It's more, it's I would say maybe it's more resolution oriented language. So like sometimes you're trying to help your spouse to be logical in the setting, but it's like that's not going to help you as her husband get anywhere productive. So it's more of I would say if you could shift the questions around from like trying to make sense of what she's thinking or saying or wanting versus, hey, like what can I say or do to make it better?
Yeah.
Like in this, try to just think that way. What can I say or do to make it better? Because you're just asking for solutions to whatever conflict, disagreement, or perspective y'all are going through. And it's going to happen a lot, I think, not only during the pregnancy, but after. And there's so many decisions you have to make. And it's common to often be on different pages.
Yeah. I do think it's a good idea to always, like, compliment your significant other and let them know, like, how beautiful you think they are, or how beautiful they are when they're pregnant. No matter what, whether they seem confident or not. I think that doesn't ever hurt, you know. It only can ever build things up. But back to my whole thing, like, I do feel like if Jeremy does compliment me, I'm like, that's not my real body.
So the compliment could be bad.
But I like, it feels good, but at the same time, it's like, that's not even me, really.
I think another thing I would give counsel on, and maybe this is one that you're gonna make decisions and you're not gonna know if it's good or not, and that's okay. I think that's that comma, and that's okay idea that you're gonna have to become comfortable with. So a decision you're gonna make along the way, if you're having a son, is like, hey, are we gonna circumcise them or not? And then it's like, and whatever you decide, and that's okay. So, or another decision, okay, another example, even with extracurricular activities, there was the perspective of, hey, do I or do I not play softball during the pregnancy? Do I just give it all up and like immediately, or am I more present? Am I doing the t-ball and softball, which I was doing in the spring into the early summer, and then it's like, okay, I was cool doing that, and then so I ended up doing softball up until the week before she gave birth, and then I was like, okay, and then also how much time am I going to take off? I'm going to take off for 2 months, more than that, less, and then so I was like, I don't know. Again, I reserved the opportunity to like look back and go, yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way if I could do it again. But I think there's something valuable and beneficial to being able to get out, especially if we're on the more conservative, cautious side and avoiding crowds from the get-go.
Yeah.
Then I thought it was really helpful for me to get out last week, to get out and play. It was really uplifting for me. Not saying it was for everybody, but it was uplifting for me. I might look back and go, hey, that was more selfish than collectively helpful. But I'm open to being wrong about that decision.
Yeah.
And that's okay. All right. Any thoughts there?
No.
Any other? Okay. Question number 4. You're going to read that one?
Yes. How did you navigate parenting disagreements with your spouse?
All right. I'll hop on this one first. So this is an interesting one. I think it's important for the men, especially because you have 2 boys, I have 1 boy, and to think about something I'm trying to do. I'm not saying I'm good at. There's 2 mindsets I've been trying to build. One mindset is what people have heard me describe as, what if this was my seventh kid? How would I think about things? Which it helps me not to be as stressed and like freak out about everything. You know, like, oh no, I gotta. He whimpers. I gotta pick him up before he starts to cry. Or he needs to be. He's hungry. So he needs to be fed. Or do I finish this meal or do I go with him? You know, do I change his diaper or like all of these things you're trying to navigate? Hey, which one do I do? What's more important? All these things. But just realizing, okay, if I had 7 kids, I wouldn't be able to get to him maybe in the next 10 minutes. But I can still get to him. Or I can't get to him in the next minute, but I'll get to him in the next 5. I'll finish my plate and then I'll eat and then I'll get to him or something like that. All of that to say, I wanted to hit this one point of. So the one mindset is, it was just my 7th kid. How would I think about it differently? How much peace would I have? How much reassurance? How much confidence would I have? Now, that's one perspective, but also I'm trying to ask, how did God design us both? Not just as a man and a woman, but also as 2 individual people and how we approach life in general. Which one of us is more cautious? Which one of us is more risky? They'll take more risks. And then especially if the cautious one also is the woman, then understanding that as you go through marriage, in parenting, that like understanding, I like to believe that if for many, many, many years, women were home with the children and they're better at keeping the children alive in general, as far as nurturing, taking care of, and being cautious and careful with the kids versus men in general. So the mindset I'm trying to adapt is Angelita as mom and woman is better at keeping my son alive than I am. So when she has the more cautious or careful or worrisome or fearful opinion about what we do with our son, maybe God built her, designed her, created her for such a way to help our son be alive and carry on with life. Versus me, like, we were at the softball game last week. I was at the softball game last week with the team, and I saw another kid my kid's age, which is whatever, he's like a month or 2 out there, and he's in the stands, and I'm like, oh, huh. I could totally have been that dad with my son out at the game and not be thinking, okay, what about the sand dust? Or what about the crowds? What about the people who come and grab his foot or grab his hand? Or what if they kiss his hand or something? Like, all of these things. Like, I could totally have been that dad having his son there, but then I also have a wife who prefers something different.
Yeah.
And then navigating, okay, so do I get mad? Or do I throw my authority around and say, oh, no, like, I'm the man of the household and I decide what I'm going to do, so I'm taking him. And then so kind of navigating all of that. So then allowing him to be here, me going to the game. But then later that weekend, I was able to go take him running. So, like, that's a little bit, like, that could
Outside.
That's a little bit more risky than him being inside.
Yeah.
But anyway, all I had to say, so I took him running in the running stroller, which is pretty awesome, by the way. Faces both ways, potentially.
That's great. And I saw it has cup holders.
Yes.
Yay.
All right. Your thoughts on navigating parenting disagreements with your spouse?
So I think we've had the conversation before where we had talked about like us having disagreements as far as parenting goes, like Jeremy and I. But okay, if I'm talking to my son and I'm telling him like if he has a disagreement with his significant other, I would want him to logically be able to explain why he feels a certain way. Because I've said it in the past that like Jeremy doesn't fight me like on things, like he doesn't feel super strongly about things sometimes, especially if I can come up with like a good explanation, a good reasoning, a good reason that I feel the way that I feel, or like examples and stuff like that. But I feel like when Jeremy has a stance on something, if I have an opposing stance, he doesn't normally try to, come back and argue with me about it. And so I feel like my advice to my sons would be like, if you genuinely feel strongly about something, maybe when your wife's not pregnant, maybe when the conversation comes up, you can have that conversation about how things logically make sense or don't make sense in regards to like the things around it that make you feel that that's what you want to do. So
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Jeremy doesn't. And, Kylo and Kalel might both end up like Jeremy, where they're like, whatever she says, And
But then, so your advice to the husbands is to be logical with their spouse.
is to at least, like, if they have an opinion, to be able to back up their opinion.
Hmm. It's
Because I think that especially like women, like when you are thinking about your child, like you're thinking about it in depth. You're thinking about it all the way through. Like, if I do this, then this and this and this, and domino effect, and they're gonna grow up and they're gonna be a serial killer. Like I feel like that's happened to me so many times. Like when I'm thinking about something and I'm like, well, I don't want to do this because I don't want him to, end up a serial killer. I don't
Yeah.
want him because they say that. Mom was saying something about how she saw that a lot of the people on death row are never crawled as children.
She probably saw some kind of viral video and that
She probably did, but either way, I've seen stuff that says like if you don't crawl long enough, it doesn't help your brain make the right connections. It increases your chances of having dyslexia and like different learning disabilities, just like stuff like that, So it's like and it's like, okay, well, what can it hurt? What can it hurt just to encourage your child to like not start walking right away? You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So, when I'm looking like, for example, like that kind of argument, and let's say Jeremy's standpoint was like, no, like we need him to start walking now. Then I would be like, no, because this is what the research shows and this is what it says and all these things, So if he would have come at me with different research that says getting your child to walk sooner increases the chances of their brain activity being further, along whatever, then I might be more on his side. But
And by the time maybe in 18 years from now, there's gonna be so much AI information, and their kids might be born with a Neuralink inside of them.
Neuralink? I doubt it.
Are implanted at birth.
What I think should be implanted at birth is birth control.
What? Stop the population of the world?
I think everybody should be born with birth control. And if you want to have a child, you have to go through the same process that people who want to adopt a child have to go through.
I think the U.S. is already struggling with a population issue. Not
Like we don't have enough?
Yeah.
I think maybe less of us will get more done.
What?
Wait, we're having population issues?
Yeah, your generation doesn't even like being. They're not even like boyfriend and girlfriend. Like, there's a massive struggle with so many men in their 20s who don't have girlfriends and haven't had one for a long while.
I'm married. I don't know
I'll
about
pull
that.
up. Yeah, you're an anomaly in the data.
I feel like I know a lot of people who are in their 20s.
Also anomalies.
I guess maybe we're all just in a little pocket bubble over here, and we're the only ones.
Well, but also they say, even it was kind of funny, which was like the way you see different microcosm is a fancy word of like San Antonio in like the churches around Texas. San Antonio's that's the church that they're often couples there at teenagers and in college students and in the singles ministries. Like there was like that known, but it made me think, like I wonder if that's a Mexican cultural influence on the city where like coupling up is more dominant than it would be around the nation.
Possibly. That's crazy.
Yeah, but even like think about this. Think about this anecdotal piece of data from our family. Okay, how old were you when you brought a boyfriend around the family for the first time?
19?
Okay.
18? Yeah.
Now, when you ask myself, Diamond, me, or Jetty, it's like they're talking like 6 years before that.
Like 12?
Yeah,
13?
so Diamond in middle school had her boyfriend at the house with his brother, right? So I would say in 9th grade, so when you're 15, so that's 4 years before you. Jetty probably very similar, but like it's just this. again, it's a one microcosm of data. Like, why was it that we're talking not months before you or Poppy had somebody over, but like it was years on all through all of us, and it's extended to Chris and Nisi. Again, you know them better than I do, but how old was it for them the first time they brought somebody over?
Yeah, they're like 20.
Right.
20. Yeah, I think these are the first ones that they have now.
So I just bring them up in this in the conversation about like people waiting longer, waiting to be in a relationship, waiting to get married and waiting to have kids. Of course, Chris would be another anomaly as far as being married and then having a kid earlier.
Yeah.
In that, but it's seems to be that your generation, there's a much bigger delay in that having a serious enough relationship with somebody to bring them around.
Yeah. I think also because people are so secretive, and it's just so like we're in such an era of like keeping up with the Joneses that I feel like
People are secretive
yeah,
in what way?
like financially, like people keep their finances secret a lot more, and I think that causes problems too.
People keep their finances secret?
Yeah, so like I feel like people have been accumulating a lot of debt.
In your generation?
Mm-hmm.
And then and that's making them hesitant to actually want to start a family with debt?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because I feel like we're accumulating a lot of debt sooner, so then it's making people less likely to want to like get married because they don't want to marry somebody that's going to take all their money.
Yeah. So you want to know another anecdotal piece of information that somebody got a hospital bill, a friend of mine, and you wouldn't even guess how much, and I won't say details because the identity would be revealed, but the hospital bill started again before any kind of deductions for insurance. It was $1 million hospital bill giving birth. Giving birth. And like the lead up before, that they were hospitalized before, and then the after. So then I think the insurance knocked it down to like 500,000. But it's still like what?
Oh, wow.
It's again, this isn't helping the cause of people having kids and having a family and going through all of that. But you think about stuff like that is pretty intense.
Yeah, that's intense.
Okay. Disagreements. Any other thoughts on disagreements with parenting?
No. I think if you can't ever just say like, oh, because I said so. No, you need to have a reason. Like I'm not saying like you have to explain everything to your child right then and there, but I'm saying like for your spouse.
Right. Which I do. So do you find yourself a conversation about arranged marriage, which is like, again, it's always wild to think about, but like there's other versions of that. Versions as in like you and I have discussed this, purposely putting yourself around other parents, maybe with values that you appreciate, and then that they're raising up their daughter in such a way. But it's kind of interesting. But it seems to also come back to this idea of values and like what you would value in a woman for your son, and then what some of those are. But but then it's also like they might be putting you through the same scrutiny. It's going, okay, well, so the scrutiny you would put on another couple about the way they're raising their daughter is the scrutiny they would put on you about the way you are and the way you're raising a son. So then it's almost like you would have to go, oh, like I'm gonna try to become the kind of daughter that they're raising, so that we would be a couple who they would admire and look up to, so that we could potentially not arrange, but
influence.
Yeah,
a marriage.
Yeah, but I'm trying to imagine a setting for you where it would be outside of a Christian like mindset as far as what you would want for your daughter-in-law. You know what I'm saying? Any thoughts there?
For discipline? Where are we at?
Okay. So when you think about the kind of daughter you would, or kind of daughter-in-law you would, or kind of wife you would want for your sons, when you think about some of those values, like I often will go to like again that I think it's they're Christian-ish, like, but are you similar? Are you different? You're like well, nah,
No, definitely more Christian-ish. At least like core underlying tone Christian. It doesn't have to be like in your face on the badge
Yeah.
Christian, but more like
But then
undertones.
Then do you think that would kind of maybe inspire or move or like sharpen you to be like, oh, okay, hey, let me sharpen my Christian-ish game because of like the kind of person the kind of person you would want for your son does have those Christian principles and they're rooted in there.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a motivation for me to, in my marriage, be the example of what I want for my sons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Got you. Good. Where we at?
Roll it in.
Do we have... Yeah. All right.
Reeling it back.
Are we... Oh, you're reeling it back as in what?
We're coming to an end.
Oh, okay. That was what that is. Okay. Yes. What... Do you have your parable ready?
I'm going to do story.
Okay. Sweet. You go first? I'll go second?
Yep. So, recently, as we've been getting closer to the birth of Kylo, Kalel and I have been at odds ends with each other. So, the saying goes that a child begins to misbehave the closer the mother gets to having the new baby. I can understand like why Kalel might be feeling at this moment in time like he's been neglected because I can't move as much, his daddy's not around, and he is at this point where he wants to play and move around all the time. Am I super nervous that I feel like you're gonna be the worst little boy when your brother comes? No, because I feel like Kalel has shown you have shown such big brother energy, good attitude towards your cousin Silesia, and you haven't met Corzin yet, but the energy I've seen you have towards Silesia has been super uplifting. You're super gentle with her. You want to play with her all the time. And even today, so you and I were sitting in the living room and I was cleaning and I was putting all the toys my mom's bought for previous grandchildren all together, and you found a baby doll. So you brought the baby doll to me and I took the baby doll and I pretended to breastfeed the baby doll. And instead of you getting mad and throwing the baby doll across the room and saying, that ugly baby doll, get away, you came and you laid your head on my lap and you watched me breastfeed the baby doll and you looked like happy. Like, oh, good. She's getting, like, my friend is enjoying what I enjoy. So I believe that when your brother gets here, it's going to be the same way. When I'm feeding your brother, I'm hopeful that you are going to admire that he is going to enjoy the same things that you do. And I have a feeling that that's the way that you're always going to be. And yet I think you're misbehaving right now because you're teething and because I'm more lazy. But I do think that you're always going to be the kind of person to want to share the things you love with the people that you love. Like even when I held Silesia, you're never mad at her. You're never ugly to her. And I appreciate you for that, even right now as a 15-month-old baby. And I feel like those are the kinds of things I'm going to see in you for a really long time to come, especially you're going to be the oldest out of these 4 cousins, and I really appreciate that. That's it.
Love it. All right. Mine for you, Corzin. I want to tell you the parable of the father, son, and the horse. So the father and the son lived at a house, and then they were out in the field one day, and they found a stray horse. And then so they, the son who was 15, found the horse, brought it back, and then the son was like, "Oh yeah, like man, I'm pretty lucky and blessed that I brought this horse back. That I found this horse and brought it back." And then the dad said, "Yeah, we'll wait and see for that perspective." And then so one day the son was out riding on the horse, and he broke his leg, falling off the horse. And then the son went to the dad. He's like, "Man, this is really bad luck that I got this horse." And the dad was like, "Well, we'll wait and see." And then the local officials were going to be going off to war, and were recruiting the young men to go to war with them. So they went to the house of the father and the son. They said, "Okay, we're here to go to war." And then they couldn't take the son to go to war because his leg was broken. So then he went to the dad and said, "Oh man, it was really lucky that we didn't have to go to war because my leg was broken." So you could keep on going down the line. Ultimately, there's this idea that sometimes like you don't really know. Something looks like a blessing, but it ends up being a curse. Something looks like a curse, but it seems like being a blessing. And sometimes you just kind of walk forward through life, and then you look back and you go, "Hey, was this good? Was this bad? Was it something neutral?" So, and I think you see that in the Bible. You see that with the story of Joseph, and you see kind of like this thing where his brothers hated him. That was bad. He was sold into slavery. That was also bad. He was esteemed and brought up in Potiphar's house, and he was like given this authority. He was blessed and accompanied by God. Hey, that was good. He was falsely accused of sexual assault. That was bad. He was thrown into prison. That's bad. He was given favor with the warden. He get authority in prison. That was good. And then he helped somebody else. That was good. And then it was like, and then they forgot about him for a little bit. That was bad. And then the Pharaoh needed somebody to interpret his dreams. That was good. And he ended up going through all of these ups and downs, and you ultimately see that God was using all of the story to help him get to where he needed to be. So all of that to say, as you think about your life, some things might look like they're really good and might not end up being that good. Some things might be bad, and they might end up being a really great blessing for you. So as you go through life, not that you have to be afraid or fearful or worried whenever something good happens, that something bad's happening around the corner, but that any experience, when you look back on it, might look a little bit differently. And we've seen that throughout history where, you reinterpret the past based on where you're at in the story. But if you keep on going in the story, you might look at the whole thing from a different perspective. Anyway, hope you use that and you're able to navigate life with maturity and wisdom with each thing you encounter. With that said, we'll see everybody on the next episode. Peace.